Hello, welcome to episode 22 of Creative Collaboration Conversations with Veronica and Jillian. And I am still Jillian, and I'm with my good friend Veronica. Hello, Veronica.
Hello, Jillian. And yes, I'm still Veronica as well. Nothing changed.
Not yet.
Not yet. Not
Yep,
planning on.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So
So I
how are
hope
you
your
too?
year's off. I hope your year's off to a good start.
Yes, always.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Always good
So,
energy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So quick check-in. Any new little updates, ideas, thoughts, discoveries, new tool, book, event, thing?
I must say,
I'm
no,
thinking the same
just
thing.
I think the focus at this point is more on recharging the energy.
Mm, mm,
So
mm,
taking it easier, just listening to some
mm,
good music and recharging. Then
mm.
you can't
Yeah,
create if you're not full.
yeah, that's true.
And
That's true.
so I feel, and always this period of the year, I feel like hibernating. I think this is the
Mm,
Romanian part of me when it's cold outside and all you want to do is
mm,
just
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
sit with a cup
mm-hmm.
of tea under a blanket.
So I feel like that's a good visual to just imagine because I feel like the topic for our episode today, like comparing personal versus company branding, lends itself to being comfortable, finding a comfortable place to sit down, have a cup of tea, or maybe you're
Yeah,
on the treadmill or on the tram or whatever you're doing, but to somehow find a comfortable place to just think about this. And we'll chat a little bit about our perspectives and experiences with personal versus company branding.
exactly.
Um,
And
yeah.
it's, the fact that I feel like hibernating in this period, that doesn't mean everyone needs to feel the same. I think it's about just be true to what you feel at that point and follow that. And I think that's actually a nice way to go towards the personal branding because personal branding should reflect who you are as a person and as a business person, but also as a personal, like you individual. And I don't think,
Mm-hmm.
especially for the entrepreneurs, and I would advise the professional ones to take it out because your personality is reflected in the way you are working and is reflected in the way you conduct business and you build relationship and you basically show up every single day in your private life as well as in your business life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Mm-hmm.
very hard to separate those two.
It's funny. When I was thinking and kind of preparing for this conversation, the first thing that came to mind for me is the episode we did on sales versus marketing.
Mhm.
And so I think
Yes, the
sales
love
versus
affair.
marketing. Yeah, company versus personal branding. I feel like they're both yes and
Correct.
scenarios. Yeah.
Exactly.
So
And
anyhow.
I'm always having this discussion with my clients, especially the one man show type of clients. So when they are coaches, for example, or personal trainers, we have some, but they are very, very small business, and usually they start alone and with the plan of hiring people, or maybe they already have some employees or collaborators. However, they are the main image of the company. And
Mm-hmm.
how do you approach that? And I'm always telling the story how I started Spin Ideas, because Spin Ideas, when I started, I was alone. So it was
Mm-hmm.
me deciding, me planning, me executing, me doing every single aspect of the business. And of course, it is overwhelming and it's normal to be like that. But how do you build a brand that no one knows about, especially in the first months, in the first year?
Mm-hmm.
And you do need to tap into your personal branding, especially if you have a big network. But
Mm-hmm.
that brings me, maybe it's a chicken and egg. How do you build your personal branding? Do you need to start
Mm-hmm.
working on your personal branding before building your company branding, or do you do them in parallel? So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think we have a lot to discuss today, actually, on this
So
topic.
what so what if we start with identifying or comparing what our how do we think of brand, like defining brand? So, I mean, obviously we can look
Mm.
up Oxford and all the, everybody has their own kind of definition on it, but I'm curious, how do you think about brand? How do you talk about it with clients, or how do you describe it?
But this is a very good question, and there are several ways to approach it. But how we do it is basically step one of the SPIN methodology. That again, we can link the free resources in our
Mm-hmm.
script, not script, transcript. Um, but it's basically who you are and how people. How do you want to be perceived? What are your values? What do you believe in? What do you want to communicate? And for me, everything goes back to values. And I know I'm boring because I keep on repeating that, but it's something very, very dear to me. And this is actually how I want to show up, and this is how I want to work, and this is how I want to conduct business. So it's basically brand is who are you and how do you want to be perceived, and how do you want to communicate with your audience and with the people
Mm-hmm.
around you? How do you want to
Mm-hmm.
have that conversation?
Mm-hmm.
How
I
about
like
you?
that. Yeah, I like that. And that's the big word is perceived, I think. It's like, how do we want to be perceived? Another conversation I often have had with clients is trying to explain that a brand is not really what you say you are, it's what people say you are, or how they
Yes.
perceive you, how they experience you. And I also think, to kind of build a solid brand, those values should be kind of unilaterally spread across the organization. A brand is not simply lipstick you put on select areas of the business. That's not a
No.
brand. It's not going to be a sustainable brand for sure. But it does, yeah, it should encapsulate everything, ideally, everything that we do, who we are, et cetera. So yeah, it's the big point I want to make is, we companies often focus so much on how they see themselves. We as companies can be more, tend to be a little bit kind of self-centered ish, thinking
Yes.
so much about what we think about ourselves and what we are projecting and what we are telling people. But I think it's prudent to also kind of tamper that a little bit and then step to the side and pay perhaps more attention to what and how we're being perceived by others, in particular the people that we want to resonate with. So yeah.
Excuse me. But think about it like that. It's like having a conversation. Because if you as a brand or a person, doesn't matter if it's about your personal branding or the company branding, if you just go and talk and talk and talk and you never listen and you never get the feedback, it's is that actually a conversation? Until you don't
Mm,
see if your message was understood or was received and what was understood from your message, you don't know how to adapt. You don't know what to keep on communicating about. And
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
it's will be a monologue, will not be a conversation, because if you don't
Yep.
get the feedback, you don't know what else you need to create and bring to the market, or
Yep.
to what else to share. And maybe we
Yeah,
keep on
absolutely.
like the best example for us, we started this podcast with specific topics in mind. We kept on going, and until we didn't ask and you got the feedback, for example, the networking, if I'm not wrong, the networking event
Yep.
had I think was one of most successful we had, and people actually asked for a second one because they wanted
Mm,
to keep on the
mm-hmm.
conversation and get more information. It's the same thing. How do you know what you need to create or what you need to share more about if you're not listening to the other? And that applies
Yeah.
to your personal branding as well as your company branding, because maybe in your head you are the best, I don't know, marketing agency, or the best service provider, or the best business strategist, or B Corp consultant. But if you communicate that, but it's not heard like that,
Mm.
what's the point, right?
Yeah. The word that's coming to mind for me is congruence. And so congruence between who we say that we are and how we actually behave, right?
Yeah.
And also congruence between how we want to resonate in how we are being perceived. So ideally, we are congruent, and there's not kind of gaps there. It's like kind of your example about listening to other people and whatnot. So how often do we see organizations that will tell everybody, they have really beautiful signs on their walls and all this beautiful web copy about how everybody's voice is welcome, etc. But then when the business owner or the leader or whomever, the way that they lead or manage is very dominant, and there's no room for anybody else's opinion, that creates a disconnect. And so we're trying to mitigate those disconnects, and instead build businesses that have more congruence between, it's like do what you say and what you do. It's like making sure those two things are kind of rowing in the same direction. And so that relates to the branding that we do with our logo and our messaging. It relates to I think all facets of our business. So how we lead the teams that we build, how we interact with the public, with competitors, with the media, with our community, etc. So I think
it's
brand it's more.
Yeah, it walk the talk.
Yeah, sure.
If you don't do that, and I think that's actually a nice segue. How do you connect your personal branding to your company branding? Because when you start, actually, especially with a brand that doesn't exist, you're just launching it. Of course, you're going to promote the brand as standalone. But for that brand to get attraction, you do need to share it on your personal accounts, right? Or to talk about it through your personal, what's the word I'm looking for? Network and venues and streamline it.
So I think what's funny is, probably you've also been to lots of workshops and webinars and read articles and whatnot about branding, right? And so often, including content that's supposedly for SMEs, right? The small, medium-sized enterprises. So often the examples used are what? Apple and Nike. And it's like, come on, or Patagonia. And it's like, those are really great and we can learn from them, but it's not. Do you feel empowered to try to do what Apple did or whatever? It's just not relatable. So I'm just kind of sharing that. So I think
that's a very good point. Actually, I'm so happy you shared that, because no one is thinking about it. Everyone is. So I think the question is, what do you want for your company? Do you want to be the next Apple or the next Patagonia or the next, I don't know, big brand? Or do you want to stay small? And the beauty is you can stay small. It's fine. Or you can grow. There's no wrong answer, but your approach should be in line with where do you want to go, setting up your goals. And then what tactics and what strategies you need to put in place to get there.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like this is this very question to build a personal brand or a company brand. I feel like it's a tale as old as time. This kind of conundrum of mine is one that is shared by many, many other folks. I've had conversations with people over the years about this very thing. So there's that. But what I do know to be true is people do business with those they know, like, and trust, right?
Correct.
Companies don't hire, people hire. And people don't hire companies, people hire people. So I feel like that, to me, is my kind of guiding light, is people do business with those they know, like, and trust. So that's the first kind of box to starting point. It's like the mindset piece always. It's like, for me, that's the truth. That's the foundational piece. To then step forward and then try to kind of grapple with this, like where to allocate resources and how to think about it and all of those things. I think, yes, exactly what you said is thinking long-term, big picture. Do you aspire to build a large business or do you not? I mean, does it mean, a small business can be 3 people on a team and it can be 50 people on a team or whatever, but do you want to employ hundreds of thousands of people or not, right? So there's that. But even to, kind of distill that even further, I think there are some other kind of questions to reflect on that help to what you were talking about, is to help kind of illuminate the strategy moving forward, right? So what are your objectives and what are your target audiences?
Exactly.
Is your objective, are you trying to attract new leads, or are you trying to attract new team members or, speaking opportunities. Because, I feel like a part of the strategy part is also platforms. And so you may exert your personal brand more or less on some platforms than others. Also, depending on what
Depending
your
on your
objectives are.
audience. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
And I
Your
think
audience and objectives.
based on what you said now, it depends, because from the beginning, the purpose, what I did with Spin Ideas, the goal in my communication was to educate people. Why do you need a marketing strategy? What is a marketing strategy? Because I realized people don't really understand that. Everyone, when it comes to marketing, what they know is Google ads and Facebook ads.
Yeah.
And to
Yeah.
be honest, I'm kind of sick and tired of that discussion.
Yeah.
So from the
Yep.
beginning, everything that I did was providing content for them to be educated. So you do need to use both brands to do that. And speaking engagements, a company is not really speaking, a person is speaking, right?
Correct.
So you will never going to ask a brand to come and speak. You're going to ask a specific person in that company, because there are so many people, especially in big organizations, and some of them they are amazing speakers, some not so much, or maybe some are better reflecting the values of that brand that you like and want to have part of an event. So there are so many factors to consider. And I don't think we can actually take the personal branding out of the company branding. And again, there's a differentiation between the micro and SMEs and the corporates. For the corporates, it's a different approach. We don't really have a lot of corporates listening to us, so I'm not going to go too much into that. But especially for the micro and SMEs that we know it's our main audience at this point, you can't take one out of the other, especially if you're a value-based company and a purpose-driven company, because then you are the main spokesperson of that brand, of your brand. So what you're talking and what you're presenting needs to be in line with what the company is doing. I think you as an entrepreneur, you are the talk, to go to my walk the talk. So you are the talk, and the brand needs to be the walk. So you are going and sharing what you're doing, but then everything that you do under the brand of your company needs to be in line. You mentioned a couple of minutes ago that you see on the walls of big companies, we value your opinion, da da da.
Yeah.
But then they don't apply it. So for me, that's exactly what you shouldn't do. If you're going and say your opinion is valued, then go and show me, organize events where you are taking into account and applying. Show me statistics applied what you said.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
there's
I
a
think of it in
combination
terms.
between those two.
Sure. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but it was like, that's I just realized, like, that's another thing, another conversation I've had with clients over the years is, let's not tell them who your brand is. Let's show them. Let's demonstrate your brand. And so that to me is like, I feel like there's enough work just focusing on that. So let's evaluate, let's identify what your brand is, and let's look for all the opportunities to demonstrate your brand values through all the facets of your business. The relationship with all of your stakeholders, et cetera. I feel like that in and of itself is a great, there you go. There's a way to build a business. Just focus just on that.
And I think that will be much more authentic and will actually show what you're doing. Instead of, like, a lot of people are focusing on showing how great we are as a brand. I think if you're educating or providing value, you're achieving that goal, that showing you're great, way better than the other way around.
So I earlier mentioned how so often the examples that are used for any branding decks or presentations or anything anywhere, it's always Apple and Nike and the big companies. So I thought I would share one that people may or may not know, but I think it's I think it's quite relevant. So there's a web company based in Chicago in the US called Orbit Media. And just for some data kind of metrics around this. So their LinkedIn page, for example, has about 8,500 followers.
Wow.
But their co-founder and their CMO, happens to be a friend of mine. This is a great guy named Andy. Andy's LinkedIn page has 54,000 followers. So he's very effectively building his personal brand, which is, no surprise, an extension of the company brand, or vice versa, because he's the co-founder. But clearly, people are very interested to learn from other people, to connect with other people, to see who they are, to get to know them. And so he's doing a fantastic job of helping his company get on the radar of more people through building his personal brand. And there's not a lot of gap between his personal brand and the company brand. It's very much in alignment. So I'll include the links to those in the show notes. You can just have a look. So I feel like that's
Perfect.
more relatable than us trying to aspire to grow like Apple or Nike or something.
And I think that's a nice way to getting to the close of the episode, because what a better way to show how to achieve that than to give a great example so people understand. Because us keep on discussing, actually not only us, but in general, keep on discussing without really providing examples is very hard to make it concrete. So I love the fact that we actually came up with this idea to share how it's done.
Yeah, I have a couple of other articles I've also read on the topic. I'll include those in the show notes. Just other perspectives. I'm somebody, I love different perspectives on things. I read a lot. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I have a lot of conversations, and I'm really curious always to learn what people do, but more importantly, why they do what they do. So some of these articles might be helpful for folks that are also trying to kind of crack this nut between personal and company branding.
Yes. And there are companies that they do it without the personal. Actually, if I'm honest, and if we really look, I don't think you can do one without the other for small companies. Because when you're going and presenting your company, it's you as a person going and presenting it. So that means you're building your personal branding as well. So if you are really going very deep inside, you can't have one without the other. Now, the question is how much you put them in balance. And that can depend. Like looking at Spin, what I did at the beginning was 50-50. Now I have to say it's more on the company side because my brand grew quite a lot. But actually it's not really true, because people still come to me or introduce me, even if I'm not so actively promoting my personal branding. But my personal branding grew quite a lot. And I'm still doing it through my events. When I'm going, I'm introducing me and then what I'm doing. So Spin Ideas is an extension of me, of what I do, but it's not me, if that makes sense. So it will be, what's the word I'm looking for? They do live together, those two. So you can't take one, you can't separate. Cohabiting, thank you so much.
Yes.
You can't have one without the other, basically. But what I feel, the focus is shifting. So sometimes you put more focus on your personal branding and less on your company, especially at the beginning. And then it starts changing. And a specific point is more balanced. Or there are moments when it's more towards your personal one and moments where it's more towards your company one.
And no, I think 100% that it kind of ebbs and flows. It's not, I think this is an example. It is a bit of an art and a science. I think both. And there's situational things and whatnot. The last piece I'm just going to toss into the equation because I think it's relevant, and I actually think there's a lot of opportunity, and it can be a sticking point for businesses. Is the team side, because so much of our conversation is about us as the business owners. How do we handle our personal brand versus our company? But then there's also the team piece, and I think this piece is underutilized. I feel like is botched too often, and so I think there's a lot of opportunity to kind of unpack the role of our employees or our teams in seeing, for example, are there folks that are on our team that also aspire to have personal brands, or maybe they do have personal brands, in ways to kind of get out in front of that and to collaborate and strategize with them. And then another way to also look at that is opportunities to help, again, demonstrate your brand, right? Because if it speaks volumes, if you have other people on your team out representing your company as opposed to just you, that there's an association, there's an understanding. Yeah, exactly. So I think a lot of businesses don't see it this way. And I think too often a lot of business owners tend to have some ego or just lack of awareness or some fear or all these other things that get in the way from actually stepping into more of an abundance growth strategy of elevating our team and having our team out there and promoting them to represent our company. So I just had to tuck this in there because it's a combination of personal and company branding.
I'm super happy you placed it. And I think it's a lot of us, we tend to see our company as our baby. And I think when you really start, could be healthy, but long term, it's very unhealthy to keep on thinking like that, because then it's hard for you to share the spotlight. Let's say you do need to share the spotlight. You really want to do that because that means it's exactly like strategic partnerships. You are tapping into a new audience, a new market. You're increasing your visibility. And you're increasing the value you can provide and the value of your company. So why wouldn't you do that? However, if you're not able to let go, and it's a lot about the ego, you will lose in the end because you stay small, you'll not be able to grow. And if you want to grow, you can't do it alone. That's that.
Yeah. And honestly, this is one of the I would say most common stumbling blocks I have seen in working with businesses over the years, with varying degree of awareness around this topic. But too often, I think business owners have a tendency to suffocate any innovation or growth. And a lot of times there's not awareness about that. They just are so intimate with their idea, their baby, that they just have a resistance to loosening the grip and letting it breathe and letting other people inject their ideas and energy into it as well. I think that there's a lot to that, and it's a very common misstep. And then also just the ego piece of, being the one always. And if you're always the one, that's not going to inspire other people to want to elevate because they're going to keep banging their heads on you. And you, the business owner, you, the business owner, often become the very disabler of growth. Disable is the opposite of enable, right? I think.
Yes.
Yeah. This is grammar lesson number 2 for today. So I think that is very typical. And I've seen it a lot of times where the business, they say they want to grow in all the things, except for that. Their leadership has to also grow, which
they actually goes into need a whole leadership.
Or need to hire that.
They don't really have. And if you look like you kept on mentioning the big brands like Apple and Patagonia. For example, Apple, at a specific point, they had to fire Steve Jobs in order to be able to grow. So at a specific point, you do need us as founders, and I'm not talking about entrepreneurs, but us as founders, at a specific point, we need either to take ourselves out or allowed other influences. Otherwise, we'll not be able to grow because we have just one way of seeing things. And growth means different perspectives, different approaches. That
and also sustainability and longevity.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yep. Cool.
That's actually a nice way to end this episode. What do you think?
I think so. I feel like all good, makes sense. Personal versus company branding. The takeaway is yes and.
Yeah, I like that. That should be our title.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Let's do that. All right. So that's a wrap on 22.
That's a wrap on 22. Thank you all for listening. And actually, I'm curious to hear how our listeners are approaching this. Is it a yes and, or is just one way or the other?
And why?
And why? Very important. Thank you all for tuning in. See you next time.
Cheers.